So, brother, we're going to start the show. I would like to start the show with a moment of silence to mourn the dearly departed Robert Saleh as the 49ers defensive coordinator. He will now venture on in the afterlife with the New York Jets as their official head coach.
Son of a bitch!
You should. I was going to say, we don't have to do the episode tonight if you don't want to. I'm dead inside too.
This is
the GoldCast.
Boom! Welcome to a somber edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis the first, baby.
Boom! So, Raymond, let's get to it. This news broke as we were preparing to literally sit down and do this podcast. Robert Saleh, I'm going to have you take the reins on most of this, but just to set people up, if you haven't already heard, Robert Saleh, it looks like he is inking the deal as we speak. He will be the new head coach for the Jets. It is a 5-year deal. And let's talk about this, Raymond. We've got a lot to unpack here. It looks like the 49ers, on top of a multitude of positions that they have to fill, now have to add defensive coordinator to this job. Of the search begins for what will look like a very different 49ers team going forward into 2021. So, Raymond, let's unpack this. Talk about this week with Robert Saleh. He was kind of busy jet setting all across the country, and now it looks like he's settled on the Jets. What are your thoughts?
Well, I would prefer to swallow my own vomit than be the head coach for the New York Jets, just because I think it is a pretty dysfunctional franchise, although they're not they're not the most dysfunctional franchise, but I think they're in that category. Like, if you were to put aside, 10 of the most dysfunctional franchises, the Jets would be a part of that group of 10. They have done some things well. They have drafted decent talent over the years. They just haven't been able to coach them up properly. And in the worst case scenarios, they've actually given those players up. Obviously, the most obvious name coming to mind is Jamal Adams, 3-time Pro Bowler out of the gate, who now plays for the Seattle Seahawks, and Sam Darnold, who's a actually promising quarterback talent. But it's still uncertain whether he's a bust or not. But it's really hard to gauge his trajectory when he's running for his life, because his line's terrible and he has barely anyone to throw to and does not have a solid running game or a defense to give him more opportunities to boot. So it's just hard, because Robert Saleh is going to be the challenge with the Jets. Is he's going to have to find an offensive coordinator to coach up Sam Darnold. And then in a year or two, if that coach is successful and they're able to make noticeable progress, then that coach is going to be out for a head coaching job, and Robert Saleh is going to be right back at square one again. That is the biggest drawback I see with playing for this franchise as it applies to Robert Saleh. He's obviously going to have no problems coaching up the defense because that is his expertise, but the challenge is really going to be retaining offensive staff, because once Sam Darnold gets groomed by the right person, that person is then going to leave Sam Darnold for another team. And then you're going to have to find somebody else to fill that void. And that is very, very difficult. We know that if you play the OC carousel game, it is typically not a good thing. Just ask Alex Smith that question. And he's not the only quarterback that suffered that. I thought that the Chargers were going to be the best fit for him. He was in LA, my understanding, after the Philadelphia interview, which concluded yesterday or today. This afternoon, he was going to go straight to Los Angeles for the Chargers or somewhere. I forget where he was going to go. He was going to go somewhere fancy. He's been getting flown out everywhere to fancy dinners, it's all the groom and the grooming process that these teams do with potential coaching candidates. And I thought that was going to be the best fit, because the Chargers did not have an issue on offense last season. Their issue was closing out teams defensively. They have an amazing quarterback, a solid running back, a bona fide number one wide receiver, And so you have everything set there, and the OC is still a part of that team. It was just the coach Anthony Lynn that got fired, but the OC was still there. So you had a coordinator in place, and all you had to do was shore up the defense, and you had a bona fide playoff contender, in my opinion. So that to me was where things needed to go. If I was Robert Saleh, the Jets is just I just think it's an uphill battle, and I'm just not sure if Robert Saleh is going to be able to sustain that climb.
Well, here's the thing. When you look at the most successful dynasties, I would say the exception being the 90s Cowboys, but if you look at the Steelers in the 70s, you look at especially the 49ers in the 80s, the Patriots of the last 2 decades, it's generally a coach paired with a quarterback. Montana, Walsh, Seifert, Young, obviously our boys. Just kidding.
Shanahan, Elway, Holmgren,
Yep.
Favre.
I was gonna say Belichick and Brady, not our boys.
Although Belichick was more of a defensive mind.
But he clearly and this is what I was saying I believe on an earlier episode, or maybe I said this offline. I can't quite remember. But if you want to be successful as a head coach when you're the defensive coordinator coming into this day and age, you can no longer rely on a number one defense to get you all the way. With the way the rules are set up now, they lend themselves to high-powered offenses. That's how this game works. And so if you're a defensive coordinator, in order for you to succeed, you are going to have to put yourself in position to succeed by understanding and learning a level of offense that you've probably never learned before. You kind of got to teach yourself how to become an offensive coordinator as well in order to survive. That is what Bill Belichick did. That's the genius of Bill Belichick. He also could be a special teams coach. He could be any coach on any position out there. He is the best coach out there. He learned every facet of the game. And that is exactly what needs to happen in order for Robert Saleh to survive, because you're going to exactly what you said is going to happen every time. Every time he gets an offensive coordinator that he's going to groom up to put his quarterback in position to win, that guy's going to get poached year in and year out. And the formula is not defensive coordinator and great quarterback. Generally speaking, it's not. It's someone who has a deep understanding of the offense that's able to maintain and keep that talented quarterback competing at a high level. And that's very difficult to do. For those of you that don't know, Raymond had alluded to earlier, Robert Saleh was in New York at the beginning of the week for a second interview, which we talked about on Tuesday's episode. Then he flew into Philadelphia, which I actually thought would have been a good fit for him. I thought Philly would have been a very good fit for him. And then, yes, apparently he was supposed to go to the San Diego, a.k.a. LA Chargers, to have another interview with them, a second interview with the Chargers, and then this drops. Here's the thing. I don't think, and I know we talked about this before, you mentioned that the Chargers was the best possible situation for him to go in. I agree, but I don't see for 1 second the Chargers actually hire him. As I've said before, I think they're looking at an offensive coordinator, especially when you got a guy like Justin Herbert, a quarterback that just comes out the gate swinging as intensely as he is. You want someone with a lot of understanding of offense to help cater and usher in this kid's career. And I just did not see Robert Saleh being the right fit. I think Eric Bieniemy from Kansas City, I think that's the right fit. I think that's who you want to go with. It's just the question is, does Bieniemy want to be in the AFC West having to go against Patrick Mahomes twice a year? Or does he want to go to somewhere like does he want to go and become the head coach of somewhere like who do we got? Jacksonville Jaguars with the Trevor Lawrence situation, then most likely drafting him. What about, or does he want to go to Houston Texans and coach Deshaun Watson? Like, he's got a couple different options here. I think the best team.
He's interviewing with Houston.
Mm-hmm. He is. The best team setup-wise to win right now is the LA Chargers. But maybe the best quarterback out there is obviously the Houston Texans' Deshaun Watson, who is still, even as of today of this recording, is still being linked to trade rumors. They're saying that the Rams have already made an offer, trading Goff, and of course, all what 3 of their picks they have in the next 10 years away over there to Houston. So there's still definitely movement on that Watson side. But it's a question of, do you take the best team in probably the toughest division, or do you take a poor team with a great quarterback in a weaker division? It's it's a tough go because just because you have Deshaun Watson doesn't mean the rest of the team is going to step up.
Indeed. So, I think it's funny you say Philadelphia. I can't see him in Philly. I can't see him in New York or Philly to me. And you make a good point about the Chargers, but to me, I'm not sure. I think, if you're not at least seriously considering hiring Saleh, then I don't think you even bother bringing him in for a second interview. So I think there had to have been some genuine consideration there, just like the Jets obviously had the most genuine consideration, as it turns out. I just don't think I'm not sure if he even concluded that interview today or if it was scheduled for tomorrow. I'm not sure how that was supposed to work out, or if he accepted it, or I guess they said they reached an agreement in principle. So that means they both said, hey, yeah, this is all good. He just has to go and sign now. So I guess the Chargers are completely out of the question. But the other obvious question that people are having now is who's going to succeed, who's going to be the successor to Robert Saleh as defensive coordinator. There's one name that's primarily the major link. There was some other veteran names that we talked about in the last episode. They all got hired. Gus Bradley got hired. Dan Quinn got hired. And we know that D'Amico Ryan, who is the linebackers coach for the San Francisco 49ers, is pegged as the front runner candidate to be promoted to defensive coordinator. He's actually been with the team since 2017. He was the defensive quality control in his first year, and then worked his way up into position coach rather swiftly, according to reports. So he was very good. He played 10 years in the NFL, I believe, with the Denver Broncos and other. I'm not sure if that was the only team he played for. He made 2 Pro Bowls in his career, and Fred Warner just loves the guy. Whether he can call plays on defense is, of course, another question because he is a young coach. So we'll just have to see. If they choose him, that'll be the big if question. If not, I expect him to go with a veteran name that knows defense very well, that can kind of fill in and just kind of do what Saleh was already doing just because everyone's used to that system. At least you hope that's what they would do. But that I think that pretty much says everything that needs to be said about Robert Saleh. What's the latest on Adam Peters?
So obviously this is the person I've been keeping track of. For those of you who are very intimately familiar with the GoldCast, Adam Peters is our VP of Player Personnel. He has helped construct 3 Super Bowl teams in the last 8 years, 2 at Denver, 1 here in San Francisco, and is in this GoldCast as compared to all the other GoldCasts, this GoldCast's humble opinion, probably the hardest person to replace in terms of coaching / front office staff. So good news. So far, every job he's applied for has been shored up and taken by someone else. The one that was looking pretty tight was the Carolina position. He went in for a second interview, but it now looks like that Ian Rappaport reports that the Carolina Panthers are expected to hire Seattle Seahawks VP of Football Operations, Scott Fitterer. I guess he was the right Fitterer for them.
Like if you're not in shape, you want to get fit, and then if you're fit, you want to get fitterer.
Yes. Like if you're like, man, I love this CrossFit. I'm so buff. I got to take it to the next level. Let's get fitterer.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. That's so it looks like as of right now, Ray, it looks like Adam Peters is most likely going to stay. His the other right man hand of John Lynch, Martin Mayhew, it does look like he has a second interview with Washington and he may be gone, but we all really wanted Adam Peters at least one more year. I feel like that's really what we are looking for with the GoldCast. One more year out of him because we are still in this Super Bowl window and it just felt like he's just not a guy you want to lose right now. Next year, sure. After we raise the Lombardi, us, the Niners, Deshaun Watson, after we're holding that Lombardi, then he can go. It's no problem. But you want to keep him for one more year. I'm just kidding. But the Deshaun Watson thing is actually, just to touch on it real quick, it's still very much alive. This is far from a wrap. Apparently, the Rams, it's been reported that the Rams have offered Jared Goff and a host of their 1.5 draft picks that they have for the next 10 years. And so offers are being made. And if the offers are being made in the NFC West, you better believe the 49ers are going to be in there too. The thing that isn't reported a lot, and if you listen to some interviews, if you actually read some previous interviews of John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, a lot of the trades that have not happened, the famous trades that haven't happened that the Niners were linked to, it's not like the Niners didn't offer. They offered. And sometimes you can find that information online. You can see what they actually offered. Oh, we offered this. They wanted this. We offered this player, but they wanted that player. Lynch has been open. I mean, they looked at Tom Brady. I mean, I think sometimes people think that when these trades don't go through that the Niners aren't trying or they're not even bothering or they don't even care. No, the Niners care. If you think for 1 second the Niners haven't put together at least 1 or 2 trade packages to see what Houston thinks, you're out of your mind. If you think that conversation hasn't happened at least once already, you're out of your mind and you're fooling yourself. Just because you don't hear about it doesn't mean it's not happening behind closed doors. But so as of right now, though, Raymond, the good news is we are keeping Adam Peters. We're losing Robert Saleh. We're keeping Adam Peters. So I will take that. I'll take that for right now. I still consider it a win.
Totally, that's a big win. I'm very happy about that, just because he is one of the key cogs to the right of John Lynch, and we really need his help in this upcoming draft because we're kind of in a weird flux position where Jimmy G's health doesn't give us confidence that the offense can sustain itself within his absence, and perhaps an insurance policy is required this season in this year's draft. We don't know. Or maybe we need defense to fill the voids from the departures that are most likely going to happen from the players that we can't retain, i.e. Richard Sherman. So a lot of questions on both sides of the football as it pertains to the draft, but I think overall the squad's going to be pretty good as long as they stay healthy as usual. But at least we know we're going to go into the draft this year with our head of scouting, the best talent evaluator we have.
I completely agree, and I'm very excited to keep Adam Peters. And it's like I feel like it's a rallying cry, like at an election. 1 more year, 1 more year, 1 more year. That's what we want out of him. All right, Raymond. Moving on, let's move into some Warriors talk right now. We had a game on Tuesday, and that was, of course, against the Indiana Pacers. And this was a game that was really lost late in the fourth quarter. A game that it was pretty tightly contested throughout the entire game. But then at the very final seconds, Warriors lose. It was 13 unanswered points at the end of the fourth quarter that did us in. And I want you to talk about what exactly went wrong. What was the difference? We were on a 2-game win streak. We were looking pretty hot. And we have a Pacers team that's not bad, but I feel like on paper the Warriors were better than. But of course, what do you think was the main difference in this loss on Tuesday?
I think it was a lack of offense down the stretch, and they just didn't have enough defense. Pacers made the shots they needed to make, and the Warriors didn't. All they had to do was retain the lead. If they would have kept what they needed to do was sustain what they did in the first quarter, which was Warriors basketball. Lots of ball movement, terrific defense, and they were up by a considerable double-digit margin after the first quarter. And that just didn't last very long in the second half of this contest. And the absence of Eric Pascal was certainly felt because he's obviously a great defensive player and also a good scorer. He can put points. He's not like a tremendous scorer, but he can put up points. So you were missing offense and defense on the floor in his absence. And by the way, that was reported today officially as a false positive. So he could have been in that game. He is in the game tonight against the Nuggets. That's already at halftime, I believe, at this point. But that's unfortunate to hear because I think if he was in the lineup, it probably would have made the difference.
It probably would have made the difference, and I completely agree. I think that if Pascal's in there, we probably win this game. But this also, what I think this really shows about the Warriors is that as scrappy and as fun as they are to watch, this is a team that needs all hands on deck, playing at the top of their game as best they can as a team, night in and night out, to stay successful. And we can't even really afford one cog right now. If there was a Klay Thompson, if we had him there to bounce out the offense, then we'd get a better shot at it. But as of right now, it's very difficult it's very difficult for this team to win without being completely on. And that's what it's going to take for this season. That's just kind of the game that they're playing right now. They're very scrappy. They're very fun to watch. And as I already said before, they kind of remind me of last year's Giants, and they're probably going to end up somewhere there, middle of the pack. Good enough to win some games. Probably bad enough to win. So I'd say good enough to win some games they shouldn't. Bad enough to lose some games they shouldn't have. So that's kind of what we're going to see a little bit of them going on. This game tonight, I'm very intrigued. We'll touch on this briefly next week's episode. This game against Denver, and of course the Friday's game against Phoenix has been canceled due to COVID. So that is your Warriors watch for the week. And we'll talk more about that as we move on. Now, Raymond, it's time for the next thing. The thing I'm probably the most excited about, our playoff eliminator pool. As we mentioned on last week's episode during the playoff eliminator pool section on this week's episode, or just earlier this week, we were talking about how I had gone off the Seahawks and had chosen the Buccaneers as a last-minute pick, and that is how I survived last week's eliminator pool. And that was a great decision, because had I chosen the Seahawks, I would have been out. So this week, Raymond, now we are re-entering the playoff pool. Once again, I can no longer use the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers are no longer available to me because I used them last week, and now I must pick another winner going forward. It's getting tight, because from here we go the AFC, NFC ships, and then the Super Bowl. So it is a very tight, and you got to really kind of choose your battles right now, because you don't want to pick somebody that's probably going to be in the Super Bowl and maybe win the game, the whole thing, i.e. the Chiefs. And what I feel like is the best thing to do in this playoff pool is to go as unemotionally as possible. Don't go with who you want to win. Oh, I really want the Buffalo Bills to go. I'm rooting for the Bills. If you don't think the Bills are going to beat whoever's in front of them, don't pick the Bills. Even if you want, I want this team, but I believe this team's going to win. Go with that. I think the main trick is to avoid getting emotional about this and then just going with someone because you want them to win. Let's say like I go, I really want the Bucs to beat the Saints, but I don't think they're going to do it, but I'm still going to bet on the Bucs. No, that's not how this works. This is just about picking a winner and surviving to the next week. All right, Ray. So let's talk about some numbers here. I've got some numbers laid out for you. We're going to start with the Ravens versus Bills game, okay? This is going to be on Saturday, January 16th. Right now, Vegas has Buffalo at 2.5-point favorites. And our betting public right now, it's 72% in favor of Buffalo, 28% in favor of the Ravens. Let's look at a little bit of betting trends, okay, here. So Baltimore is They are 4-1 straight up in its last 5 games. Baltimore is against Buffalo. I don't always put that into consideration because, that to me isn't quite as important. If you look at just some more betting trends, Baltimore is 7-0 against the spread in the last 7 games. Buffalo is 8-1 against the spread in its last 9 games. Buffalo is 7-0 straight up in its last 7 games. Baltimore is averaging 28.7 points per game. That is number 7 in the NFL. They are surrendering 18.6 points per game. That is tied for first in the NFL. And Buffalo is averaging 31.1 points per game this season, number 2 in the NFL. And they're surrendering 23.5 points per game. That is number 15 in the NFL. So pretty tight position here. Baltimore versus Buffalo. Who do you got?
I got Buffalo by a field goal. I think that's going to be a close game. Buffalo even was in a close game against the Colts. That came down to a Hail Mary. And I think the Ravens, are a little bit more difficult, at least on the ground, not so much in the air. The the Colts are better in the air, but the Ravens are better on the ground, and I think that it's going to be a close one. So Buffalo by a field goal.
All right, Buffalo by a field goal. Okay, so let's move on here. I've got the Buccaneers and the Saints. Tampa Bay against Drew Brees and the Buccaneers. Did you see the Twitter post that Brady put up of them both as old men? And it said it looked like a History Channel ad, and Brady had like a beard. Brees was balding with glasses, and he posted. It was hilarious. I don't know if he made it or if he had someone make it. I don't know if he took it from somebody else, but it was just history awaits, and then it showed them, and they both look like they're 100 years old. It's really funny. I'll have it posted up right now as I'm describing it. It'll be posted when you see it on the GoldCast. All right, so Raymond, right now, as it stands, this is a tight game. The Saints are favored at -3, and the public betting percentages right now, 42% with New Orleans, 58% with Tampa Bay. The betting public believes a little bit more in Tampa Bay, but this is one of those games I think you could close your eyes, and if they played 10 straight versions of this, I think the split might be 60-40 maybe in favor of the Saints, but the Buccaneers would still come out with at least 4 of these wins. I really do believe that. So this is going to be a tight one. I'm very curious to see how this is going to go down. This probably is going to be one of my most favorite games to watch for the weekend. So let's look at some betting trends. Okay. New Orleans defeated Tampa Bay 38-3 in the most recent meeting between these two. This was in week 9 of this season. That's pretty important. They did sweep them this season. New Orleans is 2-0 against them, beating them a total of 72-26. That is quite a haul for the Saints. New Orleans is 5-0 straight up in its last 5 games against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is also 4-2 against the spread in its last 6 games. Tampa Bay is 0-5 in its last 5 games straight up. So here we go. So Raymond, the total has hit the under in 7 of New Orleans' last 10 games. And let's take a look at some stats. Final stats here. Tampa Bay is averaging 30.8 points per game. That's number 3 in the NFL. Tampa Bay is surrendering 22.2 points per game. That's number 8 in the NFL. New Orleans is averaging 29.6. That's number 4 in the NFL, right behind the Bucs. And New Orleans is surrendering 20.4 points per game this season. That's number 3 in the NFL. 5 slots down from the Bucs. Raymond, who wins this game?
Well, I want to say that there's emotion involved with this one because I want the Saints to win because I don't feel like Tom Brady needs to win anything beyond this point. But the stats also support my emotions. Tampa Bay has a dismal record against playoff teams this season. I think they've only won 1 game, yet they've beaten everyone with a losing record. And by the way, they just got past the Washington football team who'd have thought, has a losing record. I think that the Saints complete the sweep, and I think they do it by at least 13 points. So I take the Saints.
13 points. Wow, so you would take the over on the spread here. You take the over on it.
Yep, I think the defense just overwhelms Tom, and it's just not enough for him. So I think this is an easy win. They just know that team so well. They own them right now. And again, like I said, Tampa Bay this season has struggled mightily against playoff teams. They've beaten the teams they should beat, and then the teams that perhaps that are more or less their level or more, they've only won 1 game. So this is a team that is not good against winning teams, great against losing teams.
All right, there you have it. Raymond is going for the Saints. Now here we go. Next one, Raymond, Browns and Chiefs. Okay, this one's a lot bigger. Vegas is saying Kansas City minus 10 points. The betting public, we've got 59% in favor of Cleveland, 41% in favor of Kansas City. Obviously, that now those percentage bettages, they could be spreading on. They could be betting on the line. They could be betting on the over under, the spread. So there's a lot of different things that could be happening there. So it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone believes that they're going to win, but it could be there's just a part of that bet that people like. So, but having said that, let's see here. Cleveland is 4-8 against the spread in its last 12 games. The total has hit the over in 5 of Cleveland's last 7 games. Kansas City is 0-7-1 against the spread in its last 8 games. Kansas City is 4-1 straight up in its last 5 games. And Cleveland, that's all right. We'll move on from that. Let's move down here to the bottom here. Cleveland is averaging 26.8 points per game. That's 12th in the NFL. Cleveland is surrendering 26.8 points per game. That's 23rd in the NFL. Kansas City is averaging 29.6. That's 4th in the NFL. Kansas City is surrendering 22.6. That is 10th in the NFL. So a tale of two pretty decent offenses, but definitely the difference is in the defense, where Kansas City is obviously surrendering a lot less points. Raymond, who do you think wins this game?
I think the Chiefs, without a doubt. It's just the most high-flying offense in the league. They're coming off of a break too, where in Week 17 they just really didn't have all that great of a game. So I think that they come back refreshed and ready to pick up the pace right where they left off, which was before Week 17, which was basically on a steamroll of the NFL.
All right, so Raymond says the Chiefs. I feel like this one's a given. I'm going with the Chiefs as well. Okay, final one, Ray. This is the Rams and Packers. So Green Bay is sitting at 6.5 point favorites. The betting public, 80% in favor of Green Bay, 20% in favor of Los Angeles. Obviously, a lot of people think they're the winner. Let's see here. Green Bay is 5-1 straight up in its last games against the Rams. The Rams are 6-3 against the spread in their last 9 games. The total has hit the under in 4 of the Rams' last 5 games. Green Bay is 4-2 against the spread in the last 6 games. Green Bay is 6-0 straight up in its last 6 games. All right, so here is final stats. Rams are averaging 23.6 points per game. That's tied for 20th in the NFL. The Rams are surrendering 18.6 points per game. That's tied for number 1 in the NFL. Don't forget, Aaron Donald may be out. Green Bay is averaging 31.8 points per game this season. That's number 1 in the NFL. Green Bay is surrendering 23.6 points per game this season. That is tied for 14th in the NFL. So, Raymond, who wins this game?
Aaron Donald didn't practice all week except for today. He was limited in practice. So he is, as of today, trending up towards playing. But I still think that just Green Bay is so well balanced as opposed to the Rams, where the Rams just have a few good things. They have a Ramsey, they have an Aaron Donald, they have some good wide receivers, they have a running back committee, and they have a spotty quarterback at best, especially when he's under pressure. So I just think Green Bay, refreshed, kind of conquers this particular NFC West challenger. If it was the Niners, it obviously would be a different story. But in this case, I think that perhaps, because it mattered, these are two Kyle Shanahan proteges going at it against each other. I think this time LaFleur is ready for it, and I think he's going to take advantage of an overrated Rams team.
Well, he has a much smaller task against the Rams than he did against San Francisco last year. I mean, who are we kidding? They were pretenders, and we proved it. This year, I think they're the real deal. I think Green Bay is probably going to win, so here's where we're going to go with that. Looking ahead at the landscape here, we've got the AFC, NFC ship, and then we have the Super Bowl, right? If I'm just being objective as possible, I think it's more than likely that the AFC is going to win the Super Bowl. I think the Chiefs or the Bills, one of those teams is coming out as the Super Bowl champions this year. That's objectively. I would love for the Saints to win. I'm fine with the Packers winning. I don't really care for the Rams. Don't want to see them go. And I would love to see the Bucs go. I'd love to see anybody but the Rams go and win this thing. Doesn't really matter to me. Having said that, I don't think it's their year. I think it truly is the year for the AFC. So what I'm thinking here now is that we have to go with one of these teams. Now, I've already chose the Bucs. So now I've got, let's see, 3 more choices, right? I've got the Saints, the Packers, and the Rams. And I'm still feeling like the Packers and the Rams are the safest bet. Maybe not the sexiest bet, but the safest bet to choose who I think is going to advance. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's probably the safest team to bet. Although I feel pretty good about the Saints over the Bucs, just because the Bucs, I'm just not sure. I just don't think that they can overcome. I don't think they can. I don't think they can avoid the sweep, in my opinion. But in terms of just picking even with that in mind, I still think Green Bay is the safer pick. The Green Bay game is the safer pick.
Yeah, I think it's a safer pick too. I don't want to pick between the Chiefs and the Bills because I believe they'll both be in the AFC ship. And
yeah, I'm not even touching AFC right now because both those teams are strong, bona fide teams. They're easy picks to make because of that. But I think you should save them.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, the other tricky part is that if I choose the Packers and then the Packers win and they go to the NFC Championship and they face the Saints and I think they're going to beat the Saints, then I'm forced to choose between the Bills and the Chiefs if they both make it to the AFC Championship, and that's not going to be fun either. And if I choose the Chiefs, I'm stuck there. So it's very tricky, as we're looking down this line. This is very tricky. So we shall see. All right, folks, we'll be back next week to talk, obviously, the results of the playoffs and, of course, just everything going on in the Warriors world, and we'll see where the 49ers go from here. Who do you think they should pick as their new defensive coordinator? Do you have somebody in mind? And how do you think the Niners are going to fare in the upcoming matchups here, particularly against Phoenix? Because I really want to see how they do against a fully healthy Phoenix who also played lights out last year as well.
It's supposed to be a challenging road trip, too, so it's unfortunate that game got canceled. They're playing the Nuggets, which is always a tough matchup. I think they're down by at least double-digit points right now in halftime, and then they have the Lakers coming up later in the weekend, too. So this was supposed to be a pretty difficult road stretch, so we needed to see if the road Warriors were going to battle their way through this. So we'll just have to see Nuggets and Lakers.
Absolutely, we'll have to see, and I'm hoping that at least the Warriors can stay healthy and that this ends up being a pretty good contest for them. Good test. And so concludes another edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis the first, baby.
Boom! We'll see you next time. Same GoldCast time, same GoldCast channel.